Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Royal Talents Creators Studio Live. My name is Jeff Olson. I'm the Art Education Director for Royal Talents North America, and I will be your host today. I want to thank everyone for joining us, as always. In appreciation for being here today, we'll be giving away a set of our Rembrandt oils to one lucky winner. I should mention that Rembrandt oils are 125 years old this year. They date back to the very founding of the company. Royal Talents was founded in 1899 in Apeldoorn in the Netherlands. So exciting to be celebrating this anniversary of our wonderful oil paint. To be eligible to win the set, just make a comment or ask a question during today's live broadcast. And at the end of the show, we'll announce a winner. We have a phenomenal painter as our guest today. He was born in Wilmington, Delaware. Both parents fostered in him a deep appreciation for the arts and nature. His home was filled with a myriad of art objects and hundreds of art books of all genres. At age 14, he took a keen interest in French artists and philosophies regarding plein air painting. He was especially infatuated with the work of Monet, aren't we all? Within that same period, he moved with his family from the inner city of Wilmington to the Appalachian region of southwestern Virginia. There, surrounded by the mountains and lakes and thousand-acre farms, he began to emulate his heroes by moving outdoors and painting en plein air. Today, his style of painting is deeply rooted in the fundamental philosophies of Impressionism. His work has been featured in Plein Air Magazine on multiple occasions. He has won numerous awards, conducted paintouts, and taught painting classes at every level. He is a resident artist at the William King Museum of Art's Artlab, where he maintains a painting and teaching studio. His work is represented in hundreds of private, public, and corporate collections around the world, and in 2021, he was inducted into the prestigious Plein Air Painters of Southeast. I should also mention that he will be one of the distinguished faculty members at this year's 11th Annual Plein Air Convention and Expo in Cherokee, North Carolina. Join me, everyone, in welcoming our newest Royal Talents Ambassador, Kyle Buckland. Kyle, how's it going?
Hey, Jeff. Man, what an introduction. I really appreciate that. And happy birthday to Royal Talents for 125 years. That is so exciting.
Isn't that super cool? Yeah, it's 125 years for the company and for Rembrandt. Rembrandt's
All
such
right.
a pivotal marquee brand for us still today. So super exciting to be celebrating that.
Awesome.
Awesome. And welcome to the show. Where are you at today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm in Abingdon, Virginia. So in the southwestern tip of Virginia, almost down to Tennessee.
Oh, wow, it sounds like a beautiful part of the country from your description.
Yeah, it is.
Fantastic. So you don't have to travel far to get to Cherokee, North Carolina for plein air.
No, I'm really excited. So I've taught at the Plein Air Convention for 3 years now. This will be my third year teaching there. And before I had to fly because it was out west, and I couldn't bring big canvases and lots of paint. But this year I'm going to be driving, so I'll be bringing the big canvases with
Oh man, super convenient. I'm flying cross country, almost literally here.
me. Yeah.
I'm in Seattle, of course. So we're
Okay.
going to be flying into Atlanta and then driving up. So we'll get a little bit of scenery. I'm looking forward to that drive up.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful part of the country. Yeah, you'll be driving through kind of the heart of Appalachia right there.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to get to this. This is one of my favorite events of the year. And we'll talk about it a little more too as we go. But
Hmm.
I got a few questions. For those of you who are new to the show, typically we'll have a short interview. And then I've got some images that Kyle has shared of his paintings that we're going to go through, and you're going to love that, and we'll talk about them. And then at the end, we're going to have a little Q&A where we will try to answer as many of your questions as they come up in the post. I will note that I can see your questions right now, and I can see everybody chiming in there, man. It's so cool to see so many familiar names popping up. Thank you, as always, for being here. When I'm showing the presentation, that is the slides of Kyle's work, I won't be able to see your comments. But as soon as we get back to the main screen, I'll make sure we come back and go through those and answer as much as we can. All right, with that being said, Kyle, a couple questions. The first, I loved reading about the support and encouragement that you had from your family in your bio. Do you have a
Hmm.
standout memory from those early days?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to my parents the other day about what was the first time I went to a museum, and they said I was about 2 months old, and they took me to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And I thought, oh, that makes sense, you know. So I have these memories. I mean, and I was just surrounded by art. My dad is an artist, and so he had friends. All their friends were artists, and so as far back as I can remember, there were just I was surrounded by it. It was just a way of life. I actually didn't even realize that everybody didn't have artists as parents until I got older. So it was just normal. It was just a way of being. It was kind of creativity was in every element of my childhood, and I'm very blessed and very grateful that I was able to have that support and kind of the parents that were smart enough to cultivate that in me. So.
Yeah, it's really fantastic to have that kind of support from your family. I always did as well. And when you have a talent like that, to have it fostered by the people around you, just so meaningful, and
Yeah, and
how the rest of your life turns out.
yeah, and what's interesting is I didn't really get into painting until I was about 14 or 15, but I had always been at those museums ever since I was just, 2 months old. And so it was like all these seeds were planted along the way. And so when I finally did kind of really fall in love with painting, it all the ingredients were already there, I think.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, you mentioned Impressionism, and I think anybody who's familiar with your work certainly sees the links to that, and especially the techniques that you employ. Is there a philosophical aspect to this period in art of history that you feel a kinship to?
Yeah, and I try to tell people this when I'm teaching. It's hard for us to realize how revolutionary the Impressionists were. It was so avant-garde for its time, and now we tend to look at the Impressionists as kind of the classics or the classical painters. But the whole concept of real life as an inspiration for art. There's the technical aspect of color mixing, and you've got the broken brushwork and the phenomenal discoveries that painters like Claude Monet were making in the realm of color mixing and creating color vibrancy. But the other part of it was that all of a sudden they figured out that art didn't need to be allegorical or religious, that you could go outside in your garden and find the same divine spirit in a simple scene of a peasant, or a worker out in the fields, tilling up the soil. That there was a divinity to that was just as important to the world of art as these allegorical paintings. And historically, that's what the landscape was, as it was the background to an allegorical painting or a religious painting. And those paintings were great in themselves, but eventually painters came along and said, hey, we want to just paint the landscape for the landscape. And so that really made a big impact on me, because I was always outside as a kid. And so the concept of just being outside and being, immersed in nature and painting was really important to me. And so I felt a sort of a kindred spirit when I found the Impressionists. And I thought, this is really, really something that I want to look into.
I'm glad you brought up that point about Impressionism being an outsider art movement, if you will. It was not
Mm-hmm.
something that was very challenging to the academic practices of the time, and we don't see that. It's been softened over the years, and now is very
Mm-hmm.
much the mainstream. But they were rebels.
Yeah.
They were rebels. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something that people had never seen. And I think that's really important to think about, because I think as our job as an artist is to give people, to study everything that has come before us, and then assimilate all that with what we have to say, and then give the viewer something that they haven't seen before. So,
Yeah.
the spirit of revolution that the Impressionists embodied uh, is always with me when I'm painting. I'm always thinking, how can I push the limits, of what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. That idea of capturing modern life, right? Capturing the world around them as they were encountering it, seeing it, living it, big part of it. And
Right.
certainly I see how
Absolutely.
that resonates today. Yeah. Nature, obviously, big part of your painting. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. The mountains, lakes, rivers still inform my work, and big part of yours. If you were to describe the relationship with nature now, as it relates to your practice of an artist, how would you describe that?
It's almost I would almost call it a devotional experience. When I'm out in nature, I feel so in tune with everything. And that's, I think, they tell you, if you're going to make art, or you read about making art, like Robert Henry's The Art Spirit. When I first got that book, I thought I was reading a book about how to paint, and then I realized the whole book is about self-discovery. And so I tell people when I teach, I say, you have to figure out what you love. And for me, being out in nature, it makes my heart sing. And so I think that's important as an artist, is to figure out, what makes your heart sing, and then go after that. Another thing that happened was I grew up in the city. So growing up in kind of on the outskirts of Philadelphia in Delaware there, was kind of the concrete jungle. So I had family in Virginia and West Virginia, and we would come here every summer and visit. So for a couple weeks out of the summer, I got to be a country boy and go hiking in the mountains and,
Yeah.
go ride four-wheelers and go fishing in the creek. And so these early childhood memories of this almost Disney-like land that we would go to every summer really stayed with me. And then when we moved here, when I was about 12 or 13, I think just going outside and seeing these mountains and just being like, wow, and I can't take it for granted because it's just so ingrained as this magical place for me. And then it really opened up all the doors of, like what else is out there, what other landscapes. And so I'm just continually inspired by the landscape.
I love that. I love that you mentioned your childhood experiences. There's a sense of wonder, I think, that we have as children in
Mhm.
nature. And
Absolutely.
I don't feel like as children we see ourselves separate from it. I think we're really in tune with it, and there's a feeling that's gets harder to express when you get older. I think we're all trying to kind of recapture that sense of wonder when we're out there painting. I love that
Yes,
comment.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's an important point that you have to preserve that childhood
Yeah,
like wonder and enthusiasm.
yeah. No, that's wonderful. We talked a little bit about pace. Can you tell us a little bit about your workshop that you got planned?
Yeah, I'm excited. So I'll be in the demo hall. So I'm doing two different demos. So we'll be at the Royal Talons booth right when it opens up to the public. So I'll be kicking off the demos there at the Royal Talons booth at the very first day, and then I'll also be at the Expo Hall stage on May 22nd at 1:50 p.m. And I'm going to be doing a talk on design and how to use color and value to really incorporate those elements into your design and your paintings. And I'm just really looking forward to it. Such a great vibe and energy, and it's so much learning taking place. And I'm very passionate about teaching too, just as passionate about teaching as I am about painting. So I'm excited to be there and to be part of the Royal Talons family is super exciting too. So.
Oh man, we're super excited to have you there too, and excited to have you at the booth. So on Monday, when the expo hall opens from 2 to 4, you'll be there painting, and I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be fun. Stop
If
by
you
and say
had
hello.
absolutely combine silo. And one more question before we look at the work about
Yeah.
the conference. There's always a lot of first timers, which is exciting. It's always new people coming. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's attending the event for the first time to get the most out of it, to make the most of the experience?
I would say, take a little time before you go, and we're like a week out, so it's a great time to start and really kind of look at who the instructors are and take a look at their work and find the instructors whose work really speaks to you, because those are the instructors that you want to kind of take a look at. I always try to tell people, there's a lot going on at Pace, and there's a lot to take in, and you can kind of curate your own experience. And so if you want to, kind of go all in and see as much as possible, I think that's awesome. But sometimes it's nice too to kind of plan out, okay, I'm going to kind of look here and look here. And then I would definitely say, to take an opportunity to walk around the expo hall and look at all the supplies. And I think, getting to know who makes your paint is an awesome opportunity. Sometimes we just go to the art store and we buy paint, but the fact that you guys are going to be there, I think that's awesome. Come by and see us at the Royal Towns booth, and then get to know how the paint is made, because it makes the experience of creating the painting that much more interesting and exciting when you've had the opportunity to talk to artists you've admired and talk to the paint manufacturers and learn a little bit about the product itself. So it's a great opportunity all around, I think.
Now, that's some great words of advice and just embracing that learning experience. I think it's a great idea to check out the faculty that's like you mentioned and see who resonates with you and just take advantage of all the wonderful resources. I'm glad you mentioned the expo hall. It's not just a place to go shopping, but a place where there's a lot of learning as well. You can
Mm-hmm.
find out things about your materials that you aren't going to find at the store or online. It's really unique opportunity to speak directly to the manufacturer, like you said. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. The whole thing's a fun event. It's a fun event for us on the other side of it as well too, to see everybody hear about people's experiences with the materials. So super
Mhm.
exciting. All right, you guys, we are going to share the screen here. So we're going to be switching over to a presentation mode. I'm going to change this view back to speaker, and then I'm going to share, and you're going to see the presentation come up here. And then we're going to talk about some paintings. So of
All
course, here
right.
you are in the
Yeah,
act,
up in the mountains.
Where's this at?
So this is up on Roan Mountain in Tennessee, and just some beautiful scenery up there. It's about a mile high, a mile above sea level, and the landscape is really nice up there. So the moss-covered rocks, and I just felt like this was a great kind of headshot picture because it really captured being out there and being immersed in nature, and just kind of being in the zone, having that dialogue between you and the scenery.
Yeah, yeah, that looks familiar. It looks like it could be around Seattle, all those
Yeah, I was
fir
gonna say it's
moss.
probably, once you get up there in those elevations, you get a lot of similar
Yeah,
plants and the way that the land lays down. So
no, that's a great picture. I love it. All right, so look at some paintings here. So tell us about this one.
yeah, so this is a recent painting that I did up in West Virginia. I'm doing a study for a larger piece. And I'm just fascinated by the way that you can use the texture of the paint. One of the things I love about Rembrandt paint, and I think I talked with you a little bit about this. I've been promoting Rembrandt paint for a long time because I just absolutely love the consistency. There's a buttery quality to it that allows you to get these textures, straight out of the tube. And it's, people often look at my paintings and say, "Oh, did you use a palette knife?" And I say, "Well, not really. Most of what you're seeing is brushwork. It's just that, really being able to scoop up the paint and lay it on and use the texture to create almost an element of a third dimension in the paintings."
I love the surface quality that you're getting, all the marks that you're making. It looks like you're even doing some sgraffito there a little bit, scratching back into the canvas.
Yeah, yeah, scratching back in. I love it. It's just like that next level of detail, kind of pulling back away and taking things just one step further, can really, just suggesting a little bit, and the viewer's mind really fills in the gaps.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. There's a real sense of economy, especially in this image too. I mean, a lot of times when you see a lot of texture, there's a lot of labor, a lot of work, but
Yeah,
you really can see
economy of
this.
means has been a
Yeah,
philosophy.
lots of spontaneity.
Yeah, I try to keep it. Yeah, I try to keep it as fresh as possible. I love the feeling in a quick study, and I try to preserve that spontaneity throughout the whole process.
What's the approximate size of this canvas?
This is a 12 by 16.
12 by 16.
Yeah, and
Nice.
it's a study for a 36 by 48 that I'm kind of working on. I'm almost finished with it now.
Yeah, wonderful. I love the water.
Thank you.
Now here's a contrast to the last one.
Yeah, so this is called Snowed In, and I really wanted to kind of, you talk about childhood memories. It's, I'm a big fan of kind of playing on nostalgia, and I think there's this feeling of getting snowed in and knowing that you're not going to school that day. So I really wanted to convey that, feeling of like looking out the window and be like, yeah, there's the school bus is not going to be running today. And so we get a lot of snow. If you go up in the mountains around here, it's nice because you can kind of go find the snow in the wintertime. And this is up near White Top Mountain, which is a very, guess from the name of it, a very snowy place.
Snow is really challenging for a lot of people, but you make it look easy here.
Well, I tell people, and this is the honest truth, is that there are things that I do in my painting that involve Rembrandt's pigments that I couldn't do without Rembrandt. So one of my most favorite colors is Ultramarine Deep, and I have used that Rembrandt color. I mean, I love all the Rembrandt colors, but Ultramarine Deep is just phenomenal, and it's in my book it's incomparable to any ultramarine. I think it's just really a kind of a there's a richness to it, and I use it so often. It's in those distant hills. You can kind of see that intensity that is really nice when you're trying to convey the saturation of nature at times.
Now it's a beautiful, beautiful color, and not just in the oil paint, in the watercolors, even in the acrylics. The ultramarine is a
Yeah, it's a
wonderful pigment. Yeah.
yeah, it's like having a gem or a little jewel on the end of your brush.
No, that's great.
Oh yeah, this was fun. So so this is a cool scene. So I love barns. I love red barns. And this barn in particular had a little creek kind of running right by it. it's almost like they built it and they were going to build a mill, but then it never was a mill, so they just turned it into a barn. But just really interesting dynamic composition. I try to look for big shapes and contrast and color and ways to move the viewer's eye around the painting. Um, Again, a sense of nostalgia. You know, I spent a lot of time on farms and wandering around farms in this area in particular, and so I'm always looking for those scenes that can kind of transport the viewer and myself back in time, to, you know, in a way.
I love the way you've captured the feeling of that sunbreak, that intense kind of sun peeking through the shadows and just lighting up that central part of the painting.
Yeah, it's almost like a spotlight. And I worked in theater for a while doing some scenic painting. And so I'm constantly thinking about how sets are designed and how that could play a role in how to design a painting. I think there's a crossover there that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and how you quickly just put little pieces of that same color around on the edges of trees kind of unifies the whole
Yeah, I
composition.
love to use those touches as bridges, visual bridges for the viewer to kind of move around the paintings.
Yeah, nice.
So
This one's
yeah,
a little
it's
larger.
yeah, 48 by 48. I've been working larger. Um, for me, my some of my biggest heroes in painting date back to the early 20th century, late 19th century, and painters were painting large. So the typical painting was, average, middle to large size of what we see now. And, generally the small paintings were studies for the larger pieces. So I've really been enjoying working big. This is 4 foot by 4 foot, and it really gives me some room to move some shapes around and kind of play with the surface in a way that I can't do on an 8 by 10.
Yeah, for sure. Especially some of these color relationships and nuances and how your marks work throughout it.
Yeah, again, just constantly trying to refine the image so that the viewer's eye can move around it. This is a scene up in North Carolina, and I just love the way the landscape kind of stacks up on itself. So this is a good example of some of the scenery that'll be around Pace this year. So
Oh, very cool. And the complementary color scheme that you're using is really dramatic.
yeah, it's. I always tell people it's like riding a bucking bronco when you're using those complementary colors. You have to really kind of harness them in and use them. Use some neutrals to kind of balance them out. But when it works, it's really a fun effect.
Yeah, yeah, it works really well here. I really like this painting, Kyle.
Thank you.
And this one's been everywhere.
Yeah, it keeps showing up in magazines. It was in Fine Art Connoisseur and then in Plein Air Magazine, and it's actually been accepted into the American Impressionist Society online exhibit, members online exhibit. So I'm really proud of this piece. Again, I spent a lot of time as a kid wandering around farms. There was a magical quality because I didn't get to see stuff like this in Delaware. So when I would come, and it was, in the summer, I would just be with my cousins and we would be roaming around and exploring barns. And there's just a sense of mystery and awe and wonder that is that fills those memories. And so every time I paint a scene like this, I know I'm tapping into that those early childhood memories of exploration and feeling like you're kind of you're on a conquest to conquer your kingdom, but it's just in the backyard of a farm or something.
Yeah, yeah. No, you really captured that. It looks like it could be a scary thing, an old abandoned barn, but the warmth that you've painted in terms of the colors and the light and the brush
Yeah.
strokes energize it and add to that sense of wonder, I think.
Well, thank you. I'm a big fan. Painters like Sargent and Zorn, they were so great. Cecile Beau is another one. She was a phenomenal painter and could handle reflected light, like right up there with some of the best. But just the concept of light bouncing around, that the field itself is so illuminated that it starts to illuminate the shadowed side of the barn. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by that kind of interaction between light and trying to push that contrast and that saturation to really I love when a painting feels like it's giving off light. And so that's what I was really after, because there's certain times, in the middle of the day in the summer that the sun is just so warm and there's that glow to everything. So it's kind of a trick because if you have all bright colors, it's not as warm. So you need some of those dark colors to
Right, right.
contrast. Um, and I keep, and I think it's ingrained in me because I really do believe this, but the another combination I love is like ultramarine deep and burnt sienna. And that
Hmm.
burnt sienna, the Rembrandt burnt sienna, has a certain life to it that creates these really rich darks, and they open up space because if you have a nice warm rich dark, it really opens up a shadow as opposed to like a colder dark. And I find that burnt sienna has that quality to it. So when you
Yeah.
mix it with ultramarine.
It's a very warm sienna. It's got PR 101 in it. It's really a kind of a reddish burnt sienna rather than a yellowish. And I love that about it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, a lot of my darks are laid in with that.
Yeah, really nice. Really, really wonderful. Fun painting. There's no wonder people are really enjoying it. The contrast of color, it's just, it does it. It's you almost squint looking at it. It's like you're standing in the heat of the day
Yeah,
looking up at this barn. Yeah,
got to get your sunglasses out.
that's right.
So this one cool you off a little bit. So here we're in the shade. Yeah, this is so I'm always interested in dynamic design and composition and using color throughout a painting to really move the viewer's eye around. And I think you can kind of see this. This is another big painting. So we're talking about 4 foot by 5 foot here. And when you're working that large, one of my goals is to express the same quality that you find in a quick, small study in a larger canvas. So I try to work with big piles of paint and large brushes and keep a certain spontaneity. Um, but then also trying to control a little bit, about the design and the color harmony, because you're all working on such a large surface. It's really important that your design is well thought out.
You have a great variety of brush strokes. Do you use a lot of different brushes, or do you have a few favorites?
I do. I have about 20 brushes that I work with kind of regularly, and I love flats. And I call my worn out flats my filberts. I don't really buy a lot of filberts, but I will work with a flat brush until it turns into a filbert because I wear it down. So and I try to the way that I apply the paint. So I work on kind of the lyrical quality of brush work. I try to think a lot before I put the brush to the canvas. So I take time to make sure I have the right color and the right value. And then I try to see the mark that I want to make. And when you do this process over and over again, it starts to become second nature. And so you have more tools in your toolbox. And I think the whole concept of unity and variety is really important. So using, unity in color and design and composition, and then having a wide variety of marks is always interesting to me when I see that in another painter's works.
When you're working on a large painting like this, I mean, just looking at it at a glance, it looks like it's very immediate. You're painting wet into wet. Is this type of painting that you come back to day after day, or is it something that you engage and finish in a sitting?
Believe it or not, it's mostly alla prima. So yeah, it's mostly a one kind of, I go at it and try to get the most of it finished. So it's kind of this, I get about 90% through and then I refine it. So I might get it 90% done in a day or two, and then sit back and look at it for a week, and maybe it needs a few things, maybe it's finished. Usually it doesn't need much at that point, but I like to kind of take a little break and come back to it and see if it needs something.
Now, I'm sure hearing that some folks are going, how do your paint stay so clean? How do your colors stay clean? I can see where some of the colors are mixing on the surface, but you keep a really good sense of each color. Is there a trick or a technique you use to make sure that your colors are clean when you're working?
Well, I think using a lot of paint, there's this kind of misconception that when you're first starting to paint, you should use less paint because it would be easier, but actually it's easier to paint with more paint. So I'm constantly encouraging my students to put out more paint because each color is going to retain more of its integrity when you have more paint on your palette. And also working with quality paints, if you have artist quality paints like Rembrandt, each pigment is strong enough to retain its own individual personality when you're mixing alla prima on the canvas. And so if I take a little bit of blue and I dip it, into some yellow, I'm going to get a little green, but there's also going to be a good strong bit of that blue and that yellow in the mixture too. So just feeling confident enough to squeeze out a good bit of paint. I always say, and this is kind of comes from the P.A.P artist Emil Groupie. He said, put out twice as much as you think you need, and then use it all. So
That's great advice. Great
yeah,
advice. Love it.
yeah. So
This
yeah,
is really nice. Yeah. Nice atmospheric quality here.
Yeah, so this is in Colorado from last year at Pace, and we had some of the wildfires that were giving us some smoke. So a really unusual effect to have in Colorado because usually you have very little humidity and there's not a lot of atmosphere. So I was really intrigued by that, and we went to a place called El Dorado Canyon to paint, and I really wanted to capture the atmosphere in that canyon. So this was a demo that I did at Pace.
I love this. I love in not only the atmospheric perspective, but in the foreground, the thick paint, the intensity of the mark making. I mean, the real physicality to it, and it reads so well. I love that.
Thank you.
All right, this was one of my favorites that you sent.
Yeah, this is up in Rockport, so up in Massachusetts. I mentioned the P.A.P Painters. I'm a big fan. I'm in Folly Cove Fine Art in Rockport, so not too far from where this was painted. And I love that little bit of reflection, that feeling of the rain has just
Yeah,
moved through,
yeah.
and there's a clearing happening, and to me, painting like this is like a poem. I really don't want to give the viewer too much information. I love the suggestive quality of the brushwork, and using those grays as a foil for some of the brighter colors. It's really about subtleties in a piece like this.
Yeah, yeah. I love that reflection right in the middle there too. That blue against that red oxide kind of sienna looking color. It is really,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really is wonderful touch and kind of brings the whole thing to life.
Thank you.
Yeah, and simply done. You and I were talking before we went on how that this really reminded me of paintings from the 20s and 30s. This
Yeah.
street could be from yesterday or 60 years ago.
Well, yeah, I love that. There's a timeless quality. And painters from that era were designers. They loved taking something and breaking it down into its most simple forms and finding those abstract shapes underneath the subject matter and really designing with the picture. And so that is I really cut my teeth on learning about painting when I started studying kind of what was going on up there in Cape Ann in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I really like too how the telephone pole and the wires extending from it kind of bring everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
literally holding it all together. I love it.
Yeah, kind of tied it up
Tied
and
it
kind of
off. Yeah.
yeah.
That is nice. So that is what we got for images. Those are great, Kyle. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for sharing those.
Yeah.
So fun. What was the size on that last one?
That one's a 16 by 20, and that's actually available at Folly Cove Fine Arts.
Very nice. No, I love that period of painting. The whole American painting was kind of maturing at
Hmm.
the time,
Yeah,
and
kind
this
of
was
they were
yeah,
finding their voice at that point, I think, kind of really figuring out what they wanted to do.
yeah, yeah. I mean, everybody's familiar with Hopper, but there were so many other painters during that period who were capturing rural life, and the middle between the coasts, so to speak, farmland and forest and landscape, and
Yeah,
a deep
absolutely.
way.
The Pennsylvania Impressionists are some of
Yeah,
my. Mhm.
super fun to see that. And they had this very distinct palette, lots of browns, right? And then a few blues, a few greens, but there were all these browns. And I always wonder, was it depression? Was it just because all they could afford was brown paint? or, or was there something about it that psychologically, philosophically kind of linked them to their time and their place?
Yeah. Uh, Yeah, I don't know. There was the whole Thomas Eakins school in Philadelphia, and they used a lot of brown. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it was seeping out from there.
Well, I was thinking too of the Ashcan School of Painters as
Yeah.
well. Those really earthy palettes, and of course, their subject matter was kind of the underbelly of the city too.
Yeah,
Uh,
and and then they take a little bit of vermilion and pop it right in the middle of all those grays and browns, and it just blow you away.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So we got lots of fun comments from folks here. See if we can pick some questions out. Uh,
Yeah.
Again, hello to everybody. See some familiar names. Folks are really enjoying the paintings and the brushwork, and I echo that. I really love your brushwork. I love the physical part of painting, and I love to be able to see that recorded in the marks on the surface, and yours just kind of sing. It's really wonderful to see that. And the
Thank you.
confidence you have is clear too. I mean, you're really laying some paint down it looks like with very little hesitation.
I try to do a lot of thinking before the brush hits the canvas so that when I get there, I know what I'm doing. And
Uh,
then,
no, it looks great. Lots of echoing that here. Also the street scene.
yeah.
What kind of canvas? Somebody's asking what kind of canvas you like to work on.
So I have, I don't really have a preference. I love variety of surfaces. I love working on oil primed linen. I'm a big fan of Clausen's linen, but I also will work on cotton. I like the feel of a stretched canvas. Sometimes I use panels if I'm working small, but there's something nice about the responsiveness of a stretched canvas that I like, especially when I'm working large. I tend to stretch my own canvases, and I find that to be a very kind of fulfilling experience.
No, that's great. Something about the bounce of a stretched canvas, right? I work
Yeah.
with panels and different things too, and I do like some things about panels, especially when I'm working with palette knives.
Mhm.
But there's something about the bounce of the canvas and the response to the brush that makes it unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always encourage students to experiment with different types of surfaces because they might find something that really speaks to them. And you're not going to know unless you try. So if you're just getting into painting, if you're starting to experiment, really just try everything until you find something that really speaks to you.
I think that's great advice. Don't get locked into something early on.
Yep.
Give things a try, and learn what you like, learn what you love.
Yep.
Man, so lots of great comments. Everybody loves the barn painting, I'm telling
Oh,
you.
cool. And that
Something about
painting
the
is
contrast, yeah.
yeah, that painting is you can go check it out in person at Lindor Arts in Roanoke, Virginia. They sell a lot of my large paintings through there, and that painting's up there right now.
Very cool. Might have to, well, maybe we'll find it and be able to put a link in or something. But mediums, there's a question. Are you using any mediums or is it just paint out of the tube?
I actually have been using a mixture of Galkit and Gamsol, so Gamblin Galkit, and I mix it about 3/4 Galkit to 1/4 Gamsol, and this has been I've experimented with different types of mediums, and I kind of landed on that medium. That's just what I find, but really the honest truth about it is like you want a little bit of medium in your paint, but you also don't want too much medium because in order to get that texture, and I'm a big fan of George Van Hook's work, and so shout out to George. But he made a comment and said, the paint has oil in it, so you don't want to add too much oil to it, and that's why one other reason why I love Royal Talens paint is because you don't have to add a bunch of medium to it. It's already a great consistency right out of the tube. So although I do use some Galkit when I'm first laying in and kind of laying in stains and washes. I also love to just use straight paint out of the tubes.
Well, that's the beauty of Rembrandt, and I think this more than any other paint. I mean, there's lots of different philosophies about paint making, and Royal Talens has really embraced this idea of a direct painter's paint, something that you don't have to add a lot to. And there's also kind of a unified feel from color to color. You're not having to switch things up when you switch from a titanium white, to a burnt sienna or to an ultramarine blue. They all kind of have the same consistency and feel and energy, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
I really love about it too. I just put in the link to your website in the comments, folks, so you can
Awesome.
click on that and they'll take them to the gallery information as well.
Yeah.
So when you're
Thank you.
adding the galkid and the gamsol, that mixture, and I think that's a good ratio too. I like to thin it out a little bit. Are you adding it so that it loosens the paint up, or are you trying to speed up the drying time? What's the goal that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, a little bit of both. It speeds up the drying time. It facilitates the application of the paint. I'm a very direct painter, so I like to layer paint on top of layers, and it just creates a smoother painting experience. And I find that it creates a nice receptive surface for that thicker, more straight out of the tube paint in the later stages too. It kind of tacks up a little bit and will help kind of pull the paint off the brush, which is important when you're creating texture in your work.
Nice, nice. Yeah, the galkid is a wonderful medium to work with. I've only ever heard and experienced positive things with it.
Yeah, and I will say too that loading the brush is important. See a lot of students that don't understand this. You want to really get the paint down into the furrow, and really load the brush. That way, when you push the brush against the canvas, you're able to squeeze that paint out and create a
Now that's good
textured
advice. Yeah.
stroke. So sometimes when people are having trouble creating texture in their work, yeah.
No, that's really good advice. Get some paint on your brush, for
Mhm.
sure. Um, Here's a question for you. You've got all that wonderful texture, and we talked about brushes. Do you ever use palette knives to apply paint directly to the surface?
I do, and I use them sparingly. I try not to rely too heavily on them. I want to be able to use them when I need them, but not be tied to them.
Yeah. Somebody asked again, and the ratio of Galkin and Gamsol that you're using?
So about 3 parts Galkit to 1/4 Gamsol. And people can play with that mixture. So the Galkit's a little thick like syrup. I like it a little thinner. I've mixed it as thin as 50/50. So I encourage people to play around until they find a ratio that works for them.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have it like in a little container along the side and just kind of dip your brush in it as you go?
I do. Yeah, I kind of keep it pre-mixed and then I pour it into the container. And then I also have a brush washer with just Gamsol in it that I use to clean my brushes as I go.
Do you varnish paintings after they're dry?
Sometimes I like a satin varnish. I don't like anything too glossy because it can get a little too shiny, but I like a kind of a satin finish on the paint. But I tell people, it's really, the paint is so archival that it's not necessary. And really a lot of the Impressionist paintings weren't varnished. I don't think Monet varnished many of his paintings.
Yeah, it's really a personal choice. I agree. The paint film is very durable.
Hmm.
Varnish is like just an extra layer of protection.
Hmm.
But it can, it ages and weathers too. The good news is you can remove the varnish at a later date. So there are some advantages to it, but the paint is plenty archival. I'm scanning to see if I'm missing any questions here. There's some folks who are looking forward to coming to PACE, so we're
All
going to
right.
see some of these folks at the show. So that's
Yeah, that's what.
exciting.
And come and see me. I always encourage people, come and find me. Come, I really want to meet you and work with you. That's why I'm there. And so don't hesitate to come out and say hello if you see me. If at one of the demos or just hanging out in the expo hall, come up and introduce yourself.
No, that's fun. Thanks for doing that. I think
Mhm.
a lot of people are hesitant. It's like, you guys are stars, right? Should I
Well,
ask for an
people,
autograph? Should I let him eat his lunch?
I forget that I'm a teacher. Sometimes I get awestruck. I'll see an artist that I've looked up to for 20 years, and I revert back to the student, and I have to be reminded that I'm on the faculty. So,
Well, those things never go away, right?
yeah.
There are
So
people
there's
you admire and their work, and there's always a sense of awe and inspiration that you can find regardless of where you're at in your career.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised everybody that you look up to that you might think maybe they're not approachable. They're probably more approachable than you think because they've all been where you're at. They've been in that position of looking for people to mentor them and to help them. And so it's I've always found artists to be very receptive to that kind of approach.
There's a perfect segue in one of the questions I found. The question was, when you were younger, when you were just beginning, was there any artist that you reached out to and looked for inspiration from, or actually contacted?
Absolutely. So David Lucer, up in Connecticut, I reached out to him via the internet and sent him some photos of my work. I was like 19 or 20, and he invited me to come up and paint on Mohegan Island with him for a week up on the coast of Maine. And it was a phenomenal experience. It really opened my eyes to the joys of plein air painting. I've had a lot of mentors along the way. I mean, so many that I couldn't name them all here. People have been so supportive in so many different ways. There was an artist, John Sowers, that had a studio where I now have my studio, and at the William King Museum in Abingdon, and he was super supportive and always would look at my work, and just had a really kind of a very direct way of helping me understand how to be original and how to find my voice. So yeah, lots of artists along the way. I tell people I'm self-taught, but that's not exactly accurate because I'm self-motivated, but I always seek out mentors and people that I admire. You know, I tell people if you see somebody doing something that you love, go get near them. You know, however you can just see how they operate and be around them.
Yeah, so much to learn. I encourage the same. Get out there and learn, take workshops. You know, if there isn't one person that you definitely know you want to see, something like PACE is perfect for seeing a lot of different people and then going from there and maybe doing a workshop with one individual. But I think it can be really helpful. I think I see people make leaps after going to a workshop in their work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And the level of success they have, which means the level of satisfaction that they have
Mhm.
with the process increases too. And it just makes it more fun.
Yeah, well, I think in this digital age, any opportunity you can get with somebody in real life and watch them work and talk to them, you know, and in person, that's a great experience. So all these events are really wonderful in connecting people and artists.
Excellent. Yeah, great advice. And it's going to be such a fun thing too. Remember to have fun when you're there.
Yeah, that's at the heart of what we're doing. I always tell everybody when I'm teaching, I say, if you're not having fun, then we're not doing it right.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. Well, I think we got most of the questions. I'm sorry if we missed one for somebody, but so many great comments and feedback. So Kyle, you'll have
Awesome.
to go and look after the fact and you'll be able to
Oh
see
yeah, and let
that.
me just say that I really appreciate everybody who tuned in and everybody who's watching after the fact. It's such a pleasure to be able to share with you all, and I'm super excited about being part, you know, being an ambassador for Royal Talons, and I'm just honored to be a part of the such a wonderful company.
Well, we are super happy to have you. And we have a great group of ambassadors and the relationships that we formed over the years are super important too. You know, a lot of folks ask, well, how do I become an ambassador? How do I become an ambassador? It's really an organic process. You know, we
Mhm.
don't go out and find somebody and say, hey, you should, promote our paint. It's more where we come together because we have a shared passion for the materials. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I love not only how you advocate for the brand, but you talk about how the materials play a role in achieving the success that you do in your painting. And I think that's super important connection to make.
Yeah, it's very specific and I can feel it. I can feel when I don't have those pigments on my palette. It feels like I've got like weights on my feet and I'm trying to run because I'm so used to that pigmentation that Rembrandt has that I feel like is very hard to compete with. And so when I can tell the difference and I'm always so excited when I get off my Rembrandt paints back on my palette. I'm like, oh yeah, this is where the sweet spot is.
It is. They're a joy to work with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the colors are awesome. And a very interesting palette too. Every paint company's got a little bit different palette along with different philosophies of paint making. There are many wonderful paints out there and available to artists today. Great companies making great products. It's a great industry to be a part of in the broader sense,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yep. And a noble cause. A noble cause.
It is. It is. Well, it's interesting too. Talk about going down a rabbit hole. I'm not going to take you there. But your interest in Impressionist painting and Impressionist painters, the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, for post-Impressionism, that was also the birth of modern painting manufacture.
Right.
Yeah, so the tube
Metal
was
tube.
invented, in the middle of the 19th century, and it wasn't long before companies like Sennelier, Royal Talens, Windsor started manufacturing paints and really created a level of consistency and quality that wasn't available before. And Impressionists took advantage of that.
Yeah.
There was a real kind of marriage between people who were making paints and people who were using them there that was really a unique point in history.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think that that's important to kind of maintain that relationship between the paint manufacturers and the artists because we really are kind of on the same team, and we fuel each other's interests, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we really value the feedback we get from you and from other ambassadors as well about the product. All right, somebody's flagging me here like, Jeff, you need to announce the winner.
Yeah, who's getting the paint?
They're hanging on. They're hanging on. We have a winner selected. My little drum roll here. Today's winner of the Rembrandt set is Mary Frieda. Mary Frieda. Mary Frieda.
All right.
Congratulations, Mary. You are
Congratulations,
the
Mary.
winner. So
Awesome.
to claim your prize, just direct message me on Facebook. And we're at Royal Talens NA. Hashtag Royal Talens NA. Direct message me there, and I'll get your shipping information, and we will send you out a set of the Rembrandt paints, and we'll probably throw in a little Rembrandt paper as well, so you can just get to painting right away.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kyle, for
Yes,
taking
thank
time
you.
out to talk. Really a pleasure. Always enjoy our conversations, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person in
Yeah.
just a few days now, just a few days.
Yeah, we're right back at you. It's been a great pleasure, and I really enjoy being here, and I'm excited about what the future holds for us.
Absolutely. I should say, any quick announcements besides going to Pace, anything else coming up real quick?
Yeah, so if you want to go to kylebuckland.com, you can sign up for my newsletter to keep up with all of my events. I'm booked into I'm doing stuff into 2025 now, but we've got a workshop at the Booth Western Museum I'm excited about in April of 2025. So that's going to be a fun event. And I've got a lot of other stuff that I'll be putting up on the website. So again, kylebuckland.com, just sign up for the newsletter on the homepage and we'll keep you informed.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Everybody, please go check out the website and find out where you can see Kyle in person yourself. The Booth Museum, that's a great venue. That'll be really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
I do not have an announcement for our next show, although I will be posting on Facebook and Instagram about the Plein Air Conference and from the Plein Air Conference, and I'll probably be doing some impromptu lives as well on our Facebook page and Instagram page, so keep an eye out for that. And when I have a new date for the next show, I will be sure to share it with everybody. And thank you, as always, everybody, for joining us here for the Creator Studio Live. Hang on there, Kyle, for a second, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. And we'll see you next time on the Creator Studio Live. Take care, everyone.